Rocky Top, Tennessee. Rocky Top, Tennessee. Rocky Top, Tennessee. Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Olivia, you're gonna be soaking wet.
I'll change. You were gonna set up out here.
Aren't you cold?
Not really. It's fun.
You're gonna get pneumonia. Isaac, how come you don't come play in the rain?
Because I grew up. So I'm here with my grandma.
Hi, Brandon.
This is Peggy Dean Bird out here on the TP Ranch.
Right.
So I'm talking to my grandma today. She was born in Florida,
Yes, in Mariana.
Mariana, Florida, and born to Neil
O'Neill Archie Oxendine.
and Ollie Braxton.
Ollie Braxton.
Ollie Braxton, Oxnine. That's where my brother Braxton got his name from. Okay. And you moved from Florida to BYU to go to college
Yes,
when you were 18, 19?
17.
17.
Yes.
Wow. So you graduated high school when you were 17
Yes,
and went straight to BYU.
right.
Okay, awesome. So tell me a little bit about Neil. He had a job as an Iceman, right? As they call him the Iceman.
Well, at first he was in road construction work.
Okay.
He drove a big bulldozer and did the top finish part, and then he built Air Force runways, and we moved to South Florida at that time. And they wanted him to go overseas to build Air Force bases, and he didn't want to go out of the States. So he quit his job and came back to Cottondale, Florida, and that was when he got the franchise on an ice business.
Okay. And so that was back before people had refrigerators and freezers.
Right.
So they needed someone to bring ice to pack
Right.
the stuff in. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Neil, he lost his right ear or his left ear?
It was his left ear, I think it was.
Okay. And that was in an auto accident, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then I remember he had a scar from someone got him with a knife.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was across his belly, was it?
It started on one side
Uh-huh.
and went all the way across his back.
Oof, that's a big scar.
Yeah, he had a lot of stitches in that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so tell me about when did you meet your husband? When did you meet my grandpa?
I met him at BYU.
At BYU.
Yeah.
And he was from Texas. He was
He
a
was
Texan.
from Texas, and then he left and went on his mission to Finland, and I graduated and went back to Florida and taught school in Florida.
Okay. So you guys were dating before his mission,
Yes,
and then he went on his mission,
right.
and then how long did you guys wait to get married when he came back?
He came back, I guess it was maybe about 6 months after he came back that we got engaged.
Okay. Awesome. And then you guys moved to Missouri first, or did you go?
No, we lived in Texas at first.
Lived in Texas first.
Yeah.
Was that post-Texas?
Oh, we lived in Lubbock for a while, and then we went down to Austin, Texas, where he started pharmacy school.
Okay. And my mom was born in Post, right?
No, she was born in Austin.
In Austin. And then how about Xana?
She was born in Post.
And Melanie?
In Lubbock.
In Lubbock, okay.
Yeah, all
right.
three in Texas.
Getting all the facts straight. Okay. And then you taught elementary school here at Willard.
Yes.
Okay, what year did you start that?
In about 68.
68. Okay. And I remember Melissa Richter, one of my friends, was one of your students.
Yes.
And she worked with me at the hospital. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you retired, was it Mrs. McCoy?
McCoy took my room.
Mrs. McCoy took your room. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when I was in elementary school, and even when I was in elementary school, I used to come out and do the Indian presentations for my class.
I did, yes.
Yeah. So how did that start?
Well, we went to powwows, and so the girls and I had our Indian dress, and people found out about it, and they just started asking me if I would give presentations.
And then people liked it so much
Yeah.
that when I was in high school, they requested that you come back
Right.
and do it for my senior class.
Yes.
And that was pretty cool.
Brandon, did you
Yeah.
bring your Burke t-shirt?
Did I what now?
Did you bring your Burke t-shirt?
No.
Yo-yo.
I didn't know I was supposed to.
You see the double all the way across too?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so pretty.
Here's Granddad feeding the turkeys. He's almost got it to where one of them will eat right out of his hand. But he's afraid it might peck him too hard. All right, so Granddad, you were born in 1936. How did my interview start?
You want to start over?
Yeah, I want to start over.
Okay, let's try 1934.
34, oh my gosh. I made you younger. 1934. And you went to Central High School
Yes,
in Springfield.
yes.
And where did you fall in your family as far as number?
There was 3 older and 3 younger.
Jim?
Jim,
Betty.
and Beulah were the oldest.
Okay.
There was 2 sisters and a brother older, and 2 brothers and a sister younger.
And Jack is the youngest. Pepper.
Yes.
Okay. What sports did you play in high school? Basketball?
I played 1 year of football, and I quit playing football to go to work at the filling station.
Okay.
Charlie Day,
Charlie Day.
Yes.
That's the Philly station?
at the filling station.
Oh, that's neat. And you told me one time that you had a car and a boat when you were still in school.
Yes,
Is that right?
yes.
How old were you?
17,
17. That's pretty good.
yes.
Okay. And I think my dad told me that one time your whole house got relocated to a different part of Springfield.
Not a different part. the city went by and they widened Division Street and they widened Kansas Street. And the folks was going to have to move the house back. Instead of moving it back, they bought a lot up on Division Street, about 5 blocks farther east than what they were. And they moved that house up there on that vacant lot. So then he ended up with 2 houses.
With 2 houses.
Plus cash in the bank.
Nice.
Because it got paid off. But the city, the property that they confiscated to widen Division in Kansas. So they ended up with 2 houses and money to spare.
That's not bad.
No.
And you told me that you guys, growing up, you all took turns cooking. Is that right?
Well, it really wasn't that we took turns. It was Mother made us cook. One kid cooked a meal a week. I would cook one week, Barbara would cook the next week, Jake would cook. No, Jake wasn't involved. Jim, Barbara, and I were the only 3 that got in on that cooking. Jake and Pepper didn't get in on it, and Beulah was long gone.
Okay.
So she was the oldest, and she was out on her own, so she didn't get in on that cooking with us.
And every time that Barbara cooked, it was always salmon, right?
Salmon, salad sandwiches, and ice cream.
Salmon, salad sandwiches, and ice cream every time.
Every time. Never vary.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so jumping ahead, what year did you meet Sarah?
Let's see, I'd say 54, probably.
1954? And you guys met on a blind date?
Yes, our cousin Shirley introduced us. It was supposed to be a double date. Shirley and her boyfriend was going to go with us, but her boyfriend couldn't make that night. So Sarah and I went out together. Right.
I remember you told me one time Sarah ate a whole steak, and you...
Yes. Our first date, we went out to a real nice steakhouse in Springfield. And she ate the biggest steak they had. And it was raw. Rare. Real rare.
That's a warning sign.
Yes. I should have been warned. But anyway, that was our first date.
That was
she
the
ate
first
big
date.
steak.
Wow. Okay, and you worked at the telephone company in Memphis, in Tennessee.
Yes.
How many years did you do that?
I was probably there 2 years in Memphis. But I can't even remember all these towns that I worked in. I worked in Chillicothe and Kirkwood and El Dorado. There was a little bitty hick town up there, and it was so far back in the sticks that you still had hit trails in front of the buildings, and there was no paved streets in town. And then I went down southeast Missouri, and I worked in Sykeston and Hayti and Kennett and Caruthersville and Morehouse and Campbell. And there might be 1 or 2 others that I can't remember offhand.
When you started working, it was Frisco before it was Burlington Northern.
Yes, it was Frisco.
Okay.
After I got it, I was drafted in 57, and I was in the service from 57 to 59. And when I got out in 59, Dad got me on with the Frisco in 1959. And then I retired in 1996, yeah.
So
July of 96.
how many years were you in that diesel shop?
36 years.
36 years. And what did you do on the trains? What did you work on?
Anything electrical that malfunctioned.
I remember you telling me one time that you You and your buddies put some pigeons under a box.
Yeah, we did. I and my buddy went up on the roof and we gathered up a bunch of pigeons. And we put them in lockers and whatever, and then we had 3 left over. So we put them in a box down by the drinking fountain. And this was on midnight. And it was probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And this kid went walking by there, and this box was out in the walkway. And he kicked that box, and those pigeons went one way, and he went the other.
Oh, man. Well, this is my grandpa, Jerry Gene Bowers.
Right,
We go way back.
right.
Is there anything else you want on camera?
Well, no, I don't guess so.
Did
Was there anything else you would like on camera?
we set the record straight?
What record?
It's off the record.
Yeah.
What year did you and Sarah get married?
What year did you and Grandma get married?
In 56.
1956.
Yeah, she got out of school in May, and we got married in August.
Wow.
She had a short vacation.
So this year it'll be 60 years.
It'll be 60 years in August next month.
Wow.
Did her dad like you right off the bat?
He was very quiet. He never said a whole lot to me. I don't know whether he liked me or not. He probably didn't like me at all whenever I loaded up his little daughter and took her to Memphis. I've always wondered what he thought of me whenever I did that.
And you were in the service too.
No,
No?
yes, I was in the service
Okay.
from 57 to 59. I can't remember what year. I was thinking I was drafted in February of 57, and I got out in February of 59.
And in February of 60, you had Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah.
That brings up a little story about Jeff. We had a car wreck in Springfield, Sarah and I and Jeff, and Sarah was holding Jeff. And this car ran a stop sign, and I T-boned him. And Sarah and Jeff ended up under the dash. And I could not get both of them out, so I took Jeff and a lady up in the front yard, right there on the corner. And then I went back to get Sarah. And while I was going back to get Sarah, this lady came out of the house and saw Jeff laying there in the yard, and she called the police and told them that the infant son of Jerry Bowers was thrown 40 feet from the scene of impact.
And not a scratch.
Yes, and Mom and Dad heard that over the news. I mean, it was on the news, and they heard that the little kid got thrown 40 feet from the scene of impact. And they were all upset. They just knew he was seriously hurt. But he had a little bitty red mark about 3 inches long across the top of his head.
And your back was broke, right?
What?
Didn't you break your back?
You broke your back?
Yes, I broke my back. But I didn't know it until, well, I had a ruptured disc, fractured vertebra, I guess it was, because I had to wear a body cast for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. Yeah. And while I was in that body cast, Mother and Barbara and Sarah and Jeff and Dad and I took a tour down around Branson. And Jeff got car sick. If you said car 3 times, he would throw up.
Still does.
And they had him in the back seat, and they couldn't keep him from crying. So they passed him up to the front to me, and I have on this body cast to come up just about to my neck. And I had him laying on that body cast and patting him on the back, and he threw up right down in front of that body cast. And you talk about stink. I mean, that suckers.
That is
Every
awful.
morning when I got up, I had to douse myself with talcum powder just to get through the day.
Yuck.
That's gross.
And I was with Granddad when he I was with Granddad when he killed one of Santa's reindeer.
What?
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah.
What?
Yes. They would call and tell us to come up and get Brandon. He was the only child at the time because they had to study for finals and so on and so forth. So we went up and got him, probably for finals. But anyway, we was taking him back at Christmas time, and a deer came out in front of us, and we walked out the deer in the car, and we had to go down to the police station to report it. And while we were down there, a highway patrolman come in and was talking to Brandon, and Brandon told him, said, Santa Claus is not going to come and see me this year. And the highway patrolman said, well, how come? You look like a good little boy to me. And he said, well, Granddad done killed his reindeer.
And I had glass in my diaper.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Somehow I didn't get hurt though.
Yes, he had.
Wow.
My driver's side window shattered. Glass and deer hair was everywhere. And we stopped at McDonald's to get some plastic to cover up the window. And Sarah took Jeff into the bathroom to check his diaper.
Brandon.
And Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
And it was full of glass. And we never could figure out how all that glass got in his diaper. Yeah, but I had Brandon sitting on the side of the car while I was repairing the window, and he was kicking the fender. Now this fender has been wiped out by the deer, but he was sitting there kicking the fender, kicking his legs back and forth and kicking the fender. And I told him, Brandon, don't do that, you'll scratch the paint. And this lady came by and heard that and turned and looked at that car with that caved-in fender and shook her head. She couldn't believe I was raising Cain with him about scratching the paint.
Well, that's one of my favorite stories.
That's funny.
All right, that's a wrap.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to drive it lots. Bye, Gigi.
I'm recording.
See if I can remember how to do the seatbelt.
Reverse.
So I'm Matt Frost. This is Peggy Bird, and she is my mother-in-law. And Brandon just asked her some questions, and I'm just going to do a little follow-up, kind of grill her.
Okay.
So here we go. So you had talked about with Brandon about how your father, Neil, when he was younger, did he live on the reservation, or he didn't live on the reservation?
He did not.
He did not.
No.
And he grew up in the South. Was it
Yes,
Florida? Or?
in Florida.
Okay. And did his parents come from North Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. How did that happen?
His grandfather brought the first sawmill down to northwestern Florida, and there was big money and that kind of thing then, and so then my grandfather came with him to join him down there.
And your ancestors are from North Carolina?
From North Carolina, in the Pembroke area.
And that your
With
heritage, go ahead, excuse me.
With the Lumbee Reservation.
Okay. And the Lumbee, was it a reservation or is it a tribe down there?
It's a tribe.
And what's the heritage from? Is it part of Cherokee or Navajo or?
No, they call themselves being from the Crotowans. And according to the history of my people, they were John White's lost colony came and landed on the island, and they evidently didn't have provisions to last through winter time, and so Indian tribes that were there came and took them from the island, and they went inland. And when they discovered them, they think that John White's lost colony intermingled with an Indian tribe there.
Oh, really?
Because when they discovered them, some of the Indians had blue eyes, and they had names that were the same names as those that came over. And so, in essence, they say John White's lost colony was not lost. They went inland in the swamplands and intermingled with the Indians.
And in the 1820s, 1830s, when Andrew Jackson was trying to get all the Indians, the 5 civilized tribes, to go to Oklahoma.
Yes.
The Lumbees, what did they do?
They did not know they were there in the swamplands, and so they were not gathered up and sent on the Trail of Tears.
So they stayed in
North Carolina.
Okay. And then your grandfather came for the sawmill, and some stories, these are random stories that I remember. Your father, who I never got to meet, but when he was younger, he was at a party with a lady, and what happened? Well, he got stabbed or something?
He was invited. They were on a deck like this, and this young lady had invited him to come to the party. And so he went, and he was talking with her and some others, and this guy came up and said, "You're talking to my girl." And he whipped out a knife and stabbed him, and it caught him in the side, and it went all the way across his back. And he left the party and went home. And back then, they didn't have hospitals very much that you could just go to, and so the doctor had to come to him, and he stitched him up at home.
When he woke up in the morning, he had laid there that night, and
he had bled all over the bed.
And his brother said, "You have to get a doctor."
Yes.
And the doctor didn't want to stitch him up. He wasn't going to stitch him up because he didn't think he had the money or something.
Right. But my dad had been working, and he did have the money, and he said, "I have the money. Go ahead and stitch me up."
With no painkillers or anything?
No.
That's just how it was back then.
Right.
So your mom, so that's your dad, and your mom, she was the sole member in her family. Is that right? Member of the church?
Her brother, she had a brother that was a member also.
And there's a story that I remembered of you, or of your ancestors being talking to the missionaries, and your great-great-grandpa was up on a roof.
He
Can
was
you tell
on-
that story?
Yes, he was on the roof of his house. He had to put a new roof on.
Where was that?
And that was in Mississippi.
Back in the 1800s?
Yeah. And these missionaries came through and started talking to him up on the roof. And he got interested in what they were saying. And so he said, I like what you're telling me, but I don't have time to talk to you now. I've got to get this roof finished before it rains. So if you will come back tonight after dark, I'll talk with you. And so they did come back, and they stayed up talking all night long, and they wound up joining the church.
And these are Mormon missionaries back when it was pretty hard to go down into the South,
Right.
As missionaries,
Yes,
and hard to become a member.
yes, very hard.
Yeah. So they joined the church, and then how did that work with your mom? How did that work with her becoming a member? And
Well, that was her grandparents, and her mother left home and got married, and so she didn't join the church, but she had been told about it by her parents, and so years later, after they all moved from Mississippi to Florida, and my grandmother kept telling my mother about the church, and so my mother believed what she told her, believed that it was true, and so they said, we need to get baptized. So at that time, the headquarters of the church for there was in Atlanta, Georgia. So they wrote a letter to Atlanta, Georgia, to the church, and told them who they were and that they wanted to be baptized. Could they please send some missionaries down there? And so they did. They sent missionaries down there, and my grandmother and my mother were baptized in the Chipola River together.
in Florida.
And I was about 3 years old. I was standing on the bank watching it all.
You remember it?
No.
So when they got baptized, was there a branch or ward or anything, or how did they?
No.
What did they do on Sundays? How did they?
We didn't do anything. We didn't have church. We only talked to the missionaries whenever they happened to come traveling through. And then finally, when I was about 6 years old, we found out that there was some church members in the neighboring town in Mariana. The missionaries told us that they had found some members, and so those members started having church in their home. And there were not very many of us, but we would go over to church in their home, and that was how it all started.
So that was kind of fairly tough to I mean, you guys kept your testimony, and your mom especially, through all that time. Even before she was a member, she sounded like she had a testimony that it was true.
Yes.
And
Yes.
she kept that going even when there was no ward house or anything around to,
Right.
right?
Yes.
So that happened, but then your dad wasn't the member.
No.
And how did his conversion happen?
Well,
He wasn't anti-Mormon, but
he was not anti, and he encouraged us to go to church. And if something was going on at church, he would go with us, especially if I had to give a talk or anything in church. He would be there because he was so supportive of me. And so finally, he decided that he thought he should join the church. And so my daddy smoked. He was a chain smoker. And he was a big hunter. And he would go with his buddies hunting on Sunday. And so he decided that he was going to join the church, and if he did join the church, he knew that he had to quit smoking and he had to stop hunting on Sunday. So one day he walked into the house and he said to my mother, "Do you notice anything different about me?" And she said, "No, what are you talking about?" And he said, "I don't have a cigarette in my mouth." And she said, "Oh, why?" And he said, I've decided I'm going to be baptized." And so from that day forward, my dad never ever smoked another cigarette. The only thing he substituted the cigarette with a toothpick in his mouth. And when you would see him, he would have a toothpick in his mouth. But he never ever smoked again, and he never ever went hunting on Sunday again.
He used to raise, that's an incredible conversion story. He was a hunter, he used to raise dogs.
Hunting dogs, yes. Usually he would have a matched pair of hunting dogs. And he was so good at it that he had a reputation. And people would come from out of state to buy dogs that he had trained. He had such a reputation that when Daddy passed away, he had a young matched pair that he was going to train, but he hadn't trained them yet. And this man came to the house to talk to Mother, and he said, "I want to buy his dogs." And Mother said he didn't get to train them. And he said, "I don't care. If he had them, they're good dogs. I want them." So he bought them.
Do you remember eating the stuff that he would bring home?
Oh,
when he
yes.
hunted? What kind of stuff did you guys eat?
Well, for breakfast in the morning, a standard breakfast for us was eggs and grits and quail or dove. We had that to eat all the time.
Quail and dove.
Quail and dove.
And then
And we also ate rabbits and squirrels.
and G-Mama fixed those.
G-Mama cooked those, yes.
The G-Mama, she was raised in Florida, or where was she raised?
In Mississippi.
Oh, in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And okay, cut for a sec. All right. He probably needs a break. You okay? I was thinking.
That's good. We got a lot of good stuff.
I can keep going. You can keep going.
Oh, it's good. It's good. You want me to stop the recording? Is that enough? Yeah, that's enough. I just wanted to make a short video, edited it, put some pictures in there of Neil, Ollie, my We got a coon problem. Boy, he's a big one, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. Looks pretty comfy though.
Yeah.
Done that before.
We caught him one night hanging from the bottom with all four paws on that house.
Really?
Whoa.
Something out in the woods scared him.
Yep. Well, that's bad.